Oh, we don't start with hey anymore. What makes a good villain in a fantasy book?
Great question. You know, villains are one of the things that make books be kind of what they are. You need that opposition to really allow the hero to shine. And sometimes the heroes are interesting, but the villains are really where they shine. And sometimes the villains are maybe abstract and not personified.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about 3 each of our favorite villains. And these are more personified, actual people who are the villains in these stories. But often they're not the main villain. They tend to sometimes be on the side, and elicit some incredibly profound and real bitter emotion that is really probably a great example of what you're looking to elicit anytime you're writing. You know, the classic example for me, which I think you're going to talk about here, is Dolores Umbridge.
I'm not going to.
No! Dolores Umbridge is the best example of this for me, right? Where it's somebody that I think actually steals the show when it comes to villains in Harry Potter, where you hate her more than you hate anybody else.
Because it's just such a well-written villain.
Yeah.
But there's other reasons to love villains too, and I'm excited to get into all of the reasons.
All right, so why don't we start? I kind of spoiled it. I see you have Harry Potter over there.
I do have Harry Potter.
What do you got?
I thought that you would think I was doing Umbridge. This is Order of the Phoenix. No, my favorite villain is Bellatrix Lestrange.
Ah, okay.
I think she is just... Like, she gives you the heebie-jeebies, but she's just... And probably Helena Bonham Carter. Bonham Carter? What the...
Wow.
She probably,
I did not know that was her name.
Helena Bonham Carter.
Wow. This is me being very impressed.
He's not great with names of actresses and actors.
I'm not. I really am not.
But anyway, he remembers everything else somehow. Anyway, okay, sorry. So she kind of stole the show a little bit. Like, you know, like, hi, killed Sirius Black. Like her little dance and stuff. And she's like, freaky. But I just think she's a good villain. She's well written. She's like crazed. She just came out of Azkaban.
How much of this is just because you dressed up as her once for Halloween?
I've never dressed up as her. My friend did.
You were dressed up as Bellatrix.
No, I was Electo Caro.
Oh, my bad. I thought you were Bellatrix.
So close. No, but like she's a fun one to love, but you gotta hate her, and she does become my favorite character. So
it's interesting because Bellatrix actually is one of those characters that I think people like a lot more than I did. I think she was a little, I don't know, underwhelming.
Really?
Like I really.
She's so crazy.
If you give me a choice of people to die, I'm picking Umbridge over or Bellatrix easily.
Yeah. Oh, also her death is awesome.
And I'm picking. Cool. Well, yes, but that's more of Molly than it is Bellatrix. I don't know. There just wasn't the emotional attachment. Now, like we do know how that figures into Neville and some of that stuff. Like maybe if that was played up a little more, that would have been more emotional for me.
I could see that.
But I just like. She seems this is weird, like run of the mill evil. I don't know how to describe that.
Okay. Okay.
Right, without a ton of motivations besides I like to cause people pain, which is silly villain stuff.
Sad. Well, I like her, and I think she's incredibly memorable.
All right. So speaking of, I have memorable characters in this. This is the Blade itself. Now here's the problem: the whole book is full of villains. There is not a person in here that I would call a protagonist.
Yeah.
You just have a bunch of people that are awful to each other, but they are so memorable and so interesting, and man, do you hate a bunch of them before the end of it. And the ones that you start to like, it turns out you hate them in the end. And the one that you hate in the beginning, you kind of like by the end. It's a weird thing. But the character, the villain, I guess that I'd point out here the most is Inspector Glockta.
Inspector Glockta, I like that.
A very interesting man. Who is a torturer, for lack of a better word. And you really don't like him at various points during this book. But it's just such a fascinating character. One of those characters that's incredibly memorable, really easy to think about and to let him get under your skin. And you feel the uncomfortableness of other people being around him, which I think is a good hallmark of a great villain. To have.
I'm never reading that book.
You probably would hate it. And so it's interesting because this falls in what they call grim dark fantasy.
Yes.
And so you'd expect the villains to be bad, and they are. They very much are.
Well done.
Thank you.
Abercrombie. I was talking to John Abercrombie.
Oh, not me.
No.
Okay, fine. All
right, I'm going with Amaran. What's his name?
Yep, Amaran.
He's just a jerk. and he's so selfish, and he's so self-centered, and
Right.
you just
Do you want to give a little backstory to Amaran, or do you want me to give some backstory so people will understand?
please, yes.
All right, just the backstory without spoiling too much.
Don't spoil any.
All right, so Amaran is a good guy that the reader knows is an awful guy.
Awful.
And I think that hypocrisy is actually one of the things that makes it so bad.
Yeah.
Is
you don't realize how bad he just keeps getting worse and worse type thing. Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hate him, and every time he's on screen, I hate him even more. That's all.
Awesome.
He's really well written.
Very well written. All right, so this is Jade City, and this has one of the best villains I think you'll ever find in a series. And you really, really just come to hate her. So to give you a brief idea, this is basically an Asian mafia meet fantasy world story. And the leader of the other family. So you're following the Call family. And the leader of the other family is a kind of younger woman who is merciless and awful. And really, really gets under your skin. But I think it's also what is such great fodder for you now liking the other family is because you see how awful this other lady is and kind of the consequences of that awfulness. So really, really good because of the really high stakes and just the awfulness that is on the other side of the equation. So really where a villain shines here in Jade City. The entire Greenbone saga has great villains. Definitely worth checking out if you're looking for a good villain.
This is such like a depressing video. All right.
Oh, sorry.
The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So Addie makes a literal deal with the devil, like to extend her life. She can live forever, but nobody's ever going to remember her. Okay. So because no one remembers her, the only real friend she has is the devil. His name's Luke. I guess he's really like, I don't know if he's ever really called the devil, but he is. I don't know. So Luke is like her only friend, so you get a lot of him, and then some years it'll go longer and whatever. They meet up like every July 29th or something like that. So you kind of get to like him, but you're also like, wait, do I trust you? Do I like you? I don't think I like you. But you're not that horrible, but he is kind of horrible. It's one of those like, where do you fit in and who are you and what's going to happen with you? Very, very fascinating, very intriguing. Good book.
All right, so the last villain I have, which may be one of my favorites. So this is Mad Ship, right? So this is one of the Live Ship Traders books. So this is the second, actually, in the series. Ship of Magic being the first and Ship of Destiny being the third. But it has two villains in particular that are just awful and interesting. So one of them is definitely in that Dolores Umbridge. You hate him with a fiery passion, basically from the very minute that the book starts. The other one, who's the villain, you start to actually kind of like. The problem is he's still the villain. And so it's this interesting thing to like this character, but see him do awful things, right? And you're almost thinking this is a redemption arc, and I won't spoil kind of how the whole thing goes, but man, is it a very passionate thing when you start dealing with some of these characters. But one of the best villains I think I've ever read is not the main villain, but kind of the side villain that from the very minute. I remember starting into this book and getting part of the way through and just being angry, like putting the book down and wanting to beat up the fictional person in this book because I was so angry at him. Phenomenal villains inside of here. Robin Hobb actually does a really good job with some of her villains in that regard, but never is she at a better form than when she's writing Live Ship Traders. Really highly encourage you to pick it up if you're looking for a quality villain.
I'm going to be starting that here in the next
Oh,
month
you're going to be so angry. So angry.
Well, should I not start it?
It really is interesting, though, how villains make books in a lot of regards. So I'm going to come back to Harry Potter, right? We talked about Dolores Umbridge. But really, I think the thing that makes Harry Potter so compelling is this overarching villain of Voldemort that lasts through the entire series. Yeah. Right? And the fact that these villains can be built up where they're a specter that even though they're not there, they loom over everything that happens. And I think that's one of the keys of a really high quality fantasy series tends to be high quality opposition.
Yeah. Like you can't forget that they're around. Like they're just always looming. They're always around. Crazy. Yeah, it can totally make or break a book. I think a lot of villains try to be cool and they're just not, or you're not as scared or intimidated by them.
Yeah.
Like the author probably wants you to be.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, I think the best villains are what I would call abstracts, where it's not necessarily there's any one person that's the bad guy,
Yeah.
but there are these kind of larger forces at play where people have to deal with a problem.
Or like groups of people is a lot of it too.
Sure. Yep. And you know, the interesting thing is oftentimes if you think of the situation and flip it on its head, the protagonist you're following may be considered the villain in another context.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing to consider. Now, on that delightful note.
Yeah, so happy.
I'm Blake.
I'm Jamie.
We're Blamie.
See ya.
Bye.
I guess so.
Gotcha.